Yes, we can.
We'll make sure. I'm doing my best to, yeah, I've just been using images and stuff. So if I need to, I'll zoom in or out, but just make sure that hopefully you guys can see everything on your screen. And I'll provide context, where it's needed, and things like that. So we're going to work on political cartoons and propaganda posters. I got a lot more political cartoons and propaganda posters, but I'll slide a few in there as we go. So it was something that you guys had some trouble with, sort of identifying what the idea was behind them. So we're going to work through a bunch of them and help strengthen the idea. So the thing that's great about political cartoons is that not only is it going to help you understand those, but it goes right along with a lot of the other lessons that we did, as far as of course, strengthening our historical knowledge. So, working to build out our prior knowledge and understanding of history. It also helps with our drawing conclusions. It helps us with building inferences and those types of lessons too, that are both language arts, and reading comprehension focused and social studies focused. So, sort of looking for those clues within that image to understand it, and other things like, of course, point of view. And we, mentioned primary sources, secondary sources, stuff like that. Of course, political cartoons would always be a primary source because it's something that's occurring during the time of that event. Right. And so, like, if I was to write a history, that I could use political cartoons as a primary source to work with, because I could, if I wanted to, say I was working on a history of segregation, I can look at the political cartoons, and that will help me understand the way people felt about that issue at the time. You're going to have some that are very supportive of desegregation, right, and integration. You'll have others in particular parts of the country that would be opposed to it, and you would have some political cartoons that were opposed to it. So you could discuss that in a historical way. And that's what we're going to do. All the images I have here are things that we've already talked about, as far as, like, American Revolution, Civil War, segregation, suffrage, World War I, World War II, the Cold War. So it's going to be stuff that you're also familiar with. I didn't throw any curves at you, and bring up something that wasn't, something that we haven't already talked about. So we'll go ahead and take a look at these, and I'll just call on you guys as we go along and ask you guys some questions about it, as far as what, what's the meaning here? What era is it from? What does it support or oppose? And things of that nature. And just sort of as a refresher here, political cartoons are just political commentary, right? It's just like somebody writing a editorial piece where they're offering their opinion about a particular subject or person or an event. They're just doing it in a graphic way, in a very simplified way, with an illustration. And just like I said, it takes a point of view. It may be in support of a particular idea or legislation or an event, or it may oppose it. In opposing one idea, it may be supporting another. So if you had a political cartoon that was based on, say, anti-slavery, right, that would most likely be in support of, say, Abraham Lincoln's policy, right? It would be in support of the Emancipation Proclamation, while it takes a stance against slavery. I just brought this one up, not so much to discuss it, but it was funny because we've seen one almost identical to this from way back in the late 18th century, maybe early 19th century, with King George III and Napoleon. Here, though, they've sort of reimagined it, and it's LBJ. It's President Lyndon Johnson, and the little fellow on the other side is Leonid Brezhnev, who was the premier of the Soviet Union. I think this is around 1967. It's later in the 60s before Lyndon Johnson, while he was still president, of course. But you see, they're doing the same thing. Here you have the leader of the Soviet Union and the leader of the United States, and it's been reimagined that they are now the ones carving up the world. And of course, that is during the Cold War, when you had those two sides that were pitted against each other ideologically, economically, culturally, and we're basically, fighting for influence around the world. So just thought that was kind of neat. But we'll move on to some other images here. Let me see. I want to start way back. Yeah, here we go. All right. So this one we've also seen, right? And hopefully you guys could see that. Well, this is a colorized image, so it's wouldn't have been colorized at the time, we'll put it that way. Let's see, Grace, I want to ask you, what does the segments of the snake represent? Do you remember this?
Snake?
What's that?
Is it war?
Well, we're talking about war, but look at those individual segments, and you see that they have like a little abbreviation around them too. What do those each little piece of that snake represent?
I can't see the snake.
You don't see it? What do you see?
Yeah. I see the other one holding fork and knife, but I don't see snake.
Well, darn. Okay, let me see if I can close that image and see if that helps. Oh, I hope this works. This is gonna be a bust if I can't get this to work. I'm gonna close that and see if I can share it. So I hope I don't have to share it each time. You see it now?
Oh, yeah, I was seeing a different image.
Okay. All right. I might have to work through some technical issues, but hopefully this, yeah. So the join or die image, that's what you got now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my questions will make a lot more sense now. So what does each segment of that snake represent?
States.
Before the states, though, what were they?
For the states?
Yeah, before they became states, what were those? They were the 13 what?
Amendments?
No, we're still talking about the geography. Well, we actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 8 here. But before those became states, what did we do to become states? What did we do to become the United States?
I'm not getting it.
We were colonies, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right, colonies of Britain. We were the British colonies. So, join or die. I'm going to throw this to Sasha Gay now. What does that mean? When we're looking at that image and we see these individual colonies, and we have this phrase, join or die. What is the idea that's being referenced here?
Like if they don't agree, something bad is gonna happen.
Okay, so yeah, there's gonna have to be an agreement, right? There's gonna have to be, they're gonna have to come together, right? So Tracy, what, I think we might have already kind of pointed this out. What era history is this from? What part of American history would this be in?
What area?
Like what time period? What point in time?
I had no idea for this time.
Okay, so if we were talking about the colonies, right? And we're talking about joining together, what event would this have been near? Grace or Sasha Gay, can you help us out?
Might be.
Is it the Constitution?
Well, you're on the right track. It's the American Revolution, right? So the idea here is that, and I think this is an image from Ben Franklin, you know, is one of the founding fathers, or he may have used it for, I can't remember. We read a little insert about it, but he used this to represent the idea that the individual colonies, right, needed to come together to fight Britain to win our independence. That's the big idea. But the main point here is that, as you know, we can't survive as individual pieces, right? A snake can't survive in 8 different segments, and I don't want to find a snake that does. So join or die, right? So the idea here, it's really strong language. It's a really strong idea that if we don't come together, we're going to wither away. We're going to lose our independence, or we're not going to gain our independence. I guess that would be a better way to put it. So join or die is that idea coming together. Okay. All right. So does that help a little bit? Does that kind of clear it up?
No.
At least you're honest. So, you know, each piece needs to come together because we're stronger together, right? So the idea there being that we can't fight Britain individually. We have to fight it as a whole. The snake is, it's used a lot in early American history. You've probably seen, and it's been kind of co-opted by some sort of unsavory groups more recently, the coiled snake on the flag, and it says, "Don't tread on me" at the bottom, which was sort of a battle flag. But the idea, right, if you step on a snake, you're likely to get bit, right? It's going to fight back. So the idea there that, you know, you don't tread on me, you don't tread on my rights. Again, it's kind of been, it's been used to support some kind of shady ideas more recently, and some not, you know, by certain groups, but and people that feel that they're getting their rights trampled on will often post that as an image, you know, or you'll see a decal on a vehicle or something like that. So there's a sentiment there that if you step on my rights, I'm going to fight back and I'm going to bite you, basically. Here it's represented as a whole snake. We can fight Britain, but individually, as individual colonies, we can't do that. We're going to die. So we have to join together. All right. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah.
All right. So let's take a look at another one. Let's see here. I'm going to close this. And, well, yeah, this is going to be weird. See if I can do this a little more. Let's see. All right, that's not the one I want to look at yet, but okay. All right. What do you guys have on your screen right now?
A threatening situation.
Okay. Let's see if I can do this. What do you have now?
Same thing.
Still, yeah.
It's still the threatening situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, if I do this in the future, I'm going to have to. Oh wait, wait, something's wrong here. Let me see. Okay, let me close that. Okay, what about now? Well, now you have me. Oh, this is. I'm sorry, this is not going the way I wanted it to. Okay, what about now?
The true issue.
The true
Yeah.
issue. Okay, or that's what's the matter. Okay, sorry, it's kind of clunky, but we'll get through it here. I'll just have to close out the image and open a new one each time. But I should have put this in a PowerPoint, but I was so into just getting all these images together that I didn't realize that they wouldn't share so easily. Okay, I'm gonna blow this up a little bit because we have some text at the top. So the true issue, or that's what's the matter. Okay, so that's the title here, and we'll talk a little bit about who these gentlemen are. But just want to point out, right? We have one guy on the left who's saying no peace without abolition, and then we have a guy on the right who's saying no peace without separation. And then our gentleman in the middle is saying the Union must be preserved at all hazards. And we see a map of the U.S. there that's getting pulled apart. So, Tracy, what do you think? What event from American history is this talking about?
America. Yeah, I think they talk about the base of the American that time. There are many of government, so they are try to separate the American.
So they're tearing it apart, right? They're tearing apart the U.S. What did that lead to? And think about your guy in the middle there, right? Like what he's wearing.
He's wearing like a army uniform. Yeah. Maybe he tried to prevent the American separation and abolition.
There you go. Yeah, so you got it. So you're right. The Civil War, right, is what this is going to lead to. So we have, right, the U.S. getting torn apart, and we have the two. The idea there, right, is that abolition is the only way to secure peace, and we have our other guy that's saying there's no peace without separation. We have to leave the Union in order to have peace. So Grace, who do you think that is on the left over here? Who's this guy on the left?
Civilian?
Not a senator. So he's saying no peace without abolition, right? The abolishment of slavery. So who would that be? Considering the time frame, right? Civil War.
So not civilian.
So who was president?
Oh. This is tricky.
Who wrote the Emancipation Proclamation?
Franklin.
Lincoln.
Li-
Abraham Lincoln. Yeah. So yeah, he's always, he's real tall, skinny, had kind of a long face, always had a beard. So that's Lincoln. And I wouldn't expect you necessarily to know the guy on the right. That's Jefferson Davis. So the guy on the right there was the president of the Confederacy, right, of the South during their secession. And of course, the guy in the middle was George McClellan, who was the Union commander of the Union Army right at the beginning of the Civil War. So from 1861 until I think 1862 or 63. And so you guys got the idea right? It's the idea that we have slavery, and Lincoln is trying to get it abolished. We have Jefferson Davis in the South who are, tearing the country apart, right? And here's this very physical representation of that. We are literally seeing a tear, and if you see the way they have the map oriented, right? The way it's orientated there, it's split right around, I'm going to zoom in a little more here, Virginia, right? So that tear is right there at the South, where you had all the seceding states. So, and instead of having it, holding it the other way where they're tearing it from east to west, right? They're tearing it from north to south. So just that's a representation of the Civil War there and the fallout. McClellan, saying the Union must be preserved at all hazards. To be the commanding general, and this is a little, you're probably not going to encounter this on a test or anything. He was a little bit, he wasn't the best general, and wasn't really sold on the idea of fighting. So he's more about preserving the Union and preserving his army when he did go to battle, than, making the South pay or anything like that for, seceding. But you guys get the idea there, right? First and foremost, it's the idea that they're tearing the country apart. And then, under that, it's the Civil War era. We have Lincoln and we have Jefferson Davis, who are the president of the United States, the short-term president of the Confederacy for as long as there was one. So there's the idea there. All right. So close. Let's see here. And yeah, I'm just going to have to do this way. So sorry, hopefully this doesn't give everybody a headache as I'm closing and opening windows. Okay, here's a good one. So let me share this one. All right, so here we have, let's see, the important thing here really is to see the caption at the bottom. It's like a quotation. So it says, of course he wants to vote the Democratic ticket, right? Now, looking at our image, Sasha Gay,
Yes.
what's going on here? What is the idea here? It says, of course he wants to vote the Democratic ticket. What's going on?
I'm guessing the black person wanted to vote or is a Democrat while the others are Republican and they were against him voting or him having the right to vote.
Yeah, well, you're on the right track. The one thing that you need to flip around, because this is the 1800s, this is post Civil War, this is the era of Reconstruction. Okay, your Democrats were the ones that seceded. They were largely the party of the South. They were the party of slavery, and so they're still, after the Civil War, mainly Democrats, right? So what they're doing is coercing him to vote for the Democrats, right? So you're on the track, right? So the idea here is that they're forcing him to vote against his will, right? Or for something else, right? So, and we have the ballot boxes over here on the left-hand side on the table. And you know, he seems to be the only black guy there, right? You look all around him, there's white folks in the background. You got the two guys that are pointing their guns at him. So the whole idea here is about coercion, right? The whole idea that you know, they would rather they just didn't vote, which we know, you know, that was the idea, is just to scare them away from the polls, block their ability to vote, right? We talked about the literacy test, right? That, you know, and of course, coming out of slavery, you had that a large population that was illiterate at the time. So that was one way you could do a literacy test to eliminate that's, you know, that voting block. Straight up violence, lynchings, just scaring the crap out of you know, any black voter, and intimidating them to keep them away from the polls. That was something else. Poll taxes were, you know, I mentioned this, where you had to show up and pay however much it was to vote. And of course, coming out of slavery, you know, they were impoverished, a good bit of that population. So that was something else that would keep them away. And of course, that would was all directed at that population. So here, that idea is kind of rolled into the idea of making sure that they vote the right way as well. Because what was the scare then, Grace, for having them vote outside of the Democrat Party?
Please do comment.
Yeah, so if they were, you know, coercing him to vote for a Democrat, what was the fear of him voting for a non-Democrat at that time?
He will be killed.
Well, for him, what would be the fear of the white people, right? What's the fear of the guys holding the guns, that if he votes Republican, what's going to happen?
That they're going to pass the free slavery.
Yeah, so you're on the right track. So this would have been post-slavery, right? He's already gotten the his voting rights, right, through the 13th, 14th Amendment, have been secured. But they don't want him voting for a Republican that's going to change the you know, the culture of the South, that's going to make sure that his rights are maintained. You know, they're worried about Republicans becoming an influence in the South. Of course, now, you know, that's been flip-flopped, right? I mean, Republicans do represent a lot of the South for different reasons now. At that time, right, Republicans, what they're best known for, of course, is being part of the anti-slavery movement, being the party of anti-slavery, and being the party of the Civil War, right? That at the South at that time, the thought was that it was called, across a lot of the South, the War of Northern Aggression.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let that sink in, right? In their minds, it was the North, it was the Union that caused the Civil War, that was trying to destroy the South, right? That was the propaganda that was really put out there. You know, these were just good old Southern folks trying to live their lives, that it was the North who was the aggressor. And of course, we know, you know, that the South was maintaining slavery. It was their goal to maintain the institution of slavery, and there's just no way around that. You know, there's not a historian worth their weight that's going to say that the Civil War was about anything except slavery. right? But you still today get these apologists that want to say things about like, well, you know, it was the lost cause and the South had this noble and just cause for fighting the war. No. There's no truth to that. And here that's really represented in the post-Civil War era, because we see them trying to continue to subjugate and oppress the Black population once they were freed, right? They still try to maintain that superiority over them. And one of the ways they did that was through voting, right? Through blocking their vote or coercing them to vote for more Democrats, more segregation, basically, right? So there we go with this idea of the Black vote, right? And of course, you know, that's it's still an issue in a different way. You know, there's a big push for you know, all these new voting laws in several states, and I don't want to get, you know, political or anything like that, but whether they are consciously targeting minority votes with these laws. And it's not so much that they're, you know, trying to prevent them from voting completely, but they are putting obstacles in their way. So like voter IDs, or you know, like a state ID, right? They want you to show up, and you know, honestly, that's not a bad thing to you know, have these people show up and be able to verify, you know, with identification that that's who they are and they're there to vote. The problem is access to getting an ID, right? If you live in, you know, if you're an elderly person and maybe you don't drive, right, and you have to go get an ID, that puts an obstacle in your way to voting, because you'd have to do that and secure that before you went and voted. And these people know this, right? They understand that's like, okay, well, voter ID law, on paper, it sounds great, right? We can secure our vote. Everybody shows up, has an ID, and you know, that's it. You get to vote. But access to that is the problem. You know, who's going to take this person to go and pay? I think they're, you know, maybe $50, $60 to actually get a voter ID or a state ID, and that, you know, hinders their ability to vote then. So that's, you know, one way in modern times that they target certain populations, certain voting blocks with laws today that, you know, if we do that, we can eliminate that section of voting. And of course, like right now, like literally right now in Ohio, we have this whole gerrymandering issue and they're trying to redraw districts. That's part of that as well. You want this particular district voting for this particular candidate. So you try to carve out your district based on those, based on who's going to vote for you. And they basically got caught up in it, and the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court said that is unconstitutional, what you're trying to do. And it's been going on for months now, where they're trying to redraw the district maps in Ohio to make them more fair for all candidates. All right, so that's a little bit on election history or voting history. I'll close this one here. Let's go to another one. Let's see. Okay. Now this kind of goes along with what we were just talking about. So let me get my screen back up here. Okay. Tracy, what's going on here? Who is the little guy in the picture? Who does that represent?
He are looking the statue. That is the statue for the Civil War. They had the start years, but don't have the end year.
Yeah. And so the image of the man there, what the way he's dressed and everything, who does he represent? Like, what is he supposed to? Who is he supposed to look like?
Who- maybe that is the hero of the United States in that time.
Yeah, fair enough. Uncle Sam, right? Here,
Yes.
great way to
Yeah,
put it.
maybe
Yeah.
that is the president.
Yeah. So Uncle Sam, right? So it's kind of representative of the United States, but you see the way he's looking, right? He's looking reluctant, he's looking sad, he's got his hands in his pocket. So what does that mean when we only have one date on the statue?
The one day they don't have the day. They had the years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, but we only have 1861 as the start. Why don't we have an end year there?
I think in that time he think that is the long war. So he think maybe the city will never end.
Perfect, right? So we have this idea. This is a recent political cartoon, and I picked this out because I knew we were going to be talking about the Civil War. This came after the this was made after the Charlottesville protests from a couple years ago. You might remember there was a certain president said something. We had good people on both sides, where there's a really big point of contention right now with the removal of Civil War statues, and that is alluded to in the image because we have what you can tell is a horse right at the top there of the screen, and that's likely supposed to be a Civil War general, probably Robert E. Lee. And so that sparked a lot of protests. You had, of course, people who were very supportive of removing statues. You had a whole body of people that were against that idea of removing statues. We had a clash in Charlottesville where I know there was one young lady who was killed. I think she was the only one, but we had this guy that drove through a protest, right? And he ran over somebody and killed him. But the idea underneath that, right? If we're experiencing this now where this has become such an issue, it's stating there, well, this is still going on. Did we ever finish the war? There's still all of these unsettled ideas that were never resolved during the Civil War. Racism being the big problem, right? The monster there that we never actually resolved, and we didn't accomplish that with the Civil War. So, and it's caused over and over again turmoil in the country. It's caused violence. It's caused riots. It's caused protests. It continues to sort of be this fracture that's not yet been resolved in our country. So yeah, really good point that out, right? So this is this long war, basically, that has never ended, even though we fought the battles from 1861 to 1865. The idea there, the conflict between these sides has never been resolved. So that's and it's, of course, Uncle Sam's looking at it and he's really sad. He's distraught that this is still going on. So do you guys understand that idea? You guys remember hearing about Charlottesville from a few years ago? No? Yes? Anybody? Okay, so yeah, so this is really, I thought that would have been appropriate for our discussion along with the Civil War, right? This idea here that we're still going through a lot of trouble. So that's a contemporary one. All right, let's see here. We will get another one. let's see. Okay, here's another from the same era. So let's take a look here. All right. So, Sasuke, what's going on here?
The secessionists leaving the Union.
Yep.
So they're trying to separate themselves from the Union, but they're gonna end up hurting themselves.
Perfect. Yeah, that's it exactly, right? They're going to cut themselves and they're going to fall and they're going to, you know, crack their skulls open. So, you know, the tree itself is the Union, right? That's the strength, right? Everything else coming from that, the branches there have to be secured to the tree. So, you know, here, that idea is that we, you know, by them cutting themselves off from the Union, yeah, that's you put it perfectly there, right? They're going to hurt themselves, you know, quite traumatically by sawing themselves off of the Union. So yeah, I like that one. That one was pretty cool. All right, that was really straightforward too. Glad you picked up on that. All right, so let's see here. We'll go to another one. Let's see if I can close this one, pull up another one here. All right. Okay, maybe moving a little forward in time. Let's see here. All right, let's see what I got. I'm just trying to make it sort of make it chronological so that we're kind of moving through here. Okay, here we go. Hopefully that one shows up pretty clear. Okay, everybody can see that one?
No, not yet.
Not yet. All right, let's see here. How about, where did my image go? Let me try that again. Just a second, sorry there. Why is that not working now? Let's see. How about now?
Yes.
Okay, so Grace, what's going on here?
Okay, so you have car for white folks and then the Jim Crow car. Is it about the one the blacks when they enter and then like when a black is sitting and a white man comes, he has to stand up for the white man to
Yeah.
sit.
So segregation, right? That's the word you're looking for, right? Yeah. So this is representative, right? So we have the really nice, pristine car for white folks, right? And then we have the Jim Crow car. And so it's that era of segregation. Do you remember the court case?
Yeah.
What was the court case? Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, there was this woman who stand up for a black man because okay, she was told to stand up for the white man to sit, but she disagreed to it, and then it ended up in court.
Okay, so that was, yeah, you're thinking of Rosa Parks. So that comes a little bit later.
Okay.
but yes, I mean you're on it because you got the right idea, right? It's all about segregation, whether it was Rosa Parks. Here, the Jim Crow laws of the South were from the late 1800s and early 1900s. All of that is part of that entire movement of desegregation. Okay, remember Plessy versus Ferguson, the Supreme Court case, where the gentleman sat in the train car,
Yeah.
for the white people, right? And
Yeah.
then he
Yeah.
sued. So, and here, right, the Supreme Court at that time said separate but equal was the rule, right?
Yeah.
As long as you maintain facilities for both white and black folks, as long as they are equal, you can maintain that separate but equal. So thinking about that then, what's going on to sort of emphasize that point in the image, the separate but equal role? What's going on there?
Oh, okay. So now the blacks will be at Jim Crow car, and then the whites, that's where the whites will be. So they are all in the same thing, but different seats, different.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the deal with the Jim Crow car?
That's where the blacks will be.
How's it different than the other one?
Oh, that one is not nice.
Yeah, it's all beat, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. And there is the commentary on the separate but equal, right?
Yeah.
It's not a reality. It is not a reality for black folks in the South, well, anywhere, but particularly in the South. You know, you have this nice, pristine white folks train car, right, where they're going to get great service and they got great facility, and the quote unquote separate but equal Jim Crow car, which is all ratty and ratchet, and it's going to, you know, maybe not even make it down the tracks.
Yeah.
So and that is the cartoonist here is pointing out that idea, right? His point of view, right, is that there's no such thing as separate but equal in reality. It doesn't work that way. So yeah, guys, good job. All right. So Plessy versus Ferguson, right? That was the landmark case that established separate but equal in the 1800s. Okay, so it made it was a court ruling. It basically allowed segregation. Right, the U.S. Supreme Court allowed segregation on the basis of separate but equal. As long as you maintain equal facilities for any race, you can segregate them. Okay, so when we get down the road, we'll see a different side of the story. So let's try another one here. Let me just a second. We're going to see. What else we got here? Okay, yeah, let's just jump over to some of the images I got on this web page here. So here, moving forward a little bit, you guys can see this one now, the gap in the bridge.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to zoom a little bit here to blow that up. So jumping forward in time, we talked a little bit about segregation, talked a little bit about the Civil War, right? A lot of stuff based around the Civil Rights movement, the early Civil Rights issues. Here, a little bit of a different issue, right? So just make sure you see the image there. Belgium, France on the left side of the bridge, England, Italy on the right side of the bridge. The sign says the League of Nations Bridge was designed by the President of the USA. And then we have Uncle Sam, and Uncle Sam, and we have the keystone. So that's a sort of an architectural term. The keystone is always sort of the center stone in an arch, and that, you know, closes the arch, right? Makes a complete arch. Sasha Gay, what is the idea here? So this is kind of right after World War I, the kind of the era we're talking about.
So they kind of like came together.
It's coming together, right? There is a bridge. We have, you know, parts of Europe there. Uncle Sam that we have here, who's hanging out, right? He's kicked back. What's happening there?
So is he the reason why the countries are coming together?
There you go.
He's trying to bring them together.
So the gap in the bridge, right? So the title there, right? So the gap in the bridge is the United States keystone, right? And you think about, remember, there's always sort of an ironic or sarcastic sort of element, right? So here, Uncle Sam is holding up the bridge because he's sitting on the keystone. And yeah, so we talked a little bit about Woodrow Wilson, right? Who was the president during World War I and after, and it was his idea. The League of Nations was his idea, right? That predecessor to the United Nations, to, you know, try to prevent these types of world crises again, like World War I. And so that's, you know, illustrated on the sign, right? It's showing, you know, this League of Nations bridge was designed by the President of the United States, right? So it is pointing out the fact that it was Woodrow Wilson basically who designed this League of Nations bridge, this bridge between all nations. And at the same time, it's the United States that's holding up its progress and its completion because they never joined. They never became a member of the League of Nations, and that was a result of domestic problems, right? There's a lot of there was a segment of legislators and things within the United States that did not want us to join, that prevented us from joining, even though that Woodrow Wilson had basically suggested the idea. So does that track with everybody? Does it make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, so that whole idea is like we were the keystone, we were the one element missing there that kept the bridge from being completed, even though we designed it. Let's see what else I got here. Okay, well, here's another World War I. Tracy, what's going on here? So thinking about World War I, we have two messages on the sign. We have peace on earth, goodwill toward men on the front. So I hear at Christmas time a lot. And then war ammunition for sale, orders filled promptly on the back. And we have Uncle Sam there again. So Tracy, what is the message here that the artist is trying to convey?
The message here is the peace and the war is as parallel in that time. The peace on earth, good you talk, man. The peace in the world for sale order filled from I don't know how to explain.
Okay. We have two competing messages, right?
Yes.
Right. So and the artist is conveying maybe, Uncle Sam's promoting one message to the world, right, on the front. And right, that's why you have on the front of this, those are called sandwich boards, like those types of signs, and because they would have, you know, like delis and stuff would use them to promote like a deal during the day. So peace on earth, goodwill towards men across the front, right? That's what you're promoting. So this would be before the United States entered World War I. We were trying to maintain our neutrality, where we were still a bit of a isolationist. You know, we didn't want to get involved and embroiled in what was going on in Europe. So peace on earth, goodwill towards men. But we were also selling war goods to, Britain and Russia and these the countries that were fighting Germany and the Hungarian Empire and things like that. So on the back side, right, we have this double standard. We're speaking we're giving two messages that are completely opposed to each other. Peace on one side. Have you ever heard the term, how's it put? Speaking on both sides of your mouth. Like one side of your mouth is saying one thing and the other side of your mouth is saying something else. So playing these two roles, and it's a double standard, right? So we're promoting the idea of peace while behind us in sort of in the shadows, we are engaging in the war through selling our war goods, right? So two different ideas here that Uncle Sam is conveying, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and particularly towards the American people, we were promoting the idea of peace, staying out of the war while making sort of these backroom deals to, you know, lend or sell ammunition and war goods. All right, let's look at, let's try this one. You guys see that one?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Grace, you take a shot here. Who do you think in the window is? We're moving forward again in time. We're past World War I. Who do you think that?
Tax collector.
Tax collector.
Yeah.
In a sense, he was. So Great Depression era, World War II.
Okay.
Who might that be?
So yeah. I'm sorry, come again.
Thinking about the era of the Great Depression and World War II, who might that be in the window?
Roosevelt.
Perfect. Yeah, you got FDR there, Franklin Roosevelt. So you have, if you notice on the hats of those three guys there, it says East, West, North, and there's probably somebody behind them there that we can't really see. And they're big sacks there, they're big bags. It says confidence.
Yeah.
What's going on there then?
Their support for him, they have confidence in him.
Perfect. Yes, right. They are depositing. So it does say deposits over his head, right? And so like a bank transaction where you would deposit your money, they are putting their confidence, right? They're putting their faith in FDR. So is this a supportive cartoon towards FDR, or is it a critical one?
Supportive.
There you go, right? And then look at the way everybody looks, right? We talk about
happy.
They're happy. Yeah, they're happy. They're confidence. So FDR smiling, right? He's having a good time, taking everybody's confidence, I guess, wherever you want to put it. But yeah, so there you go. This is a really straightforward one. We encounter FDR so often in different ways. So here's one where it's certainly showing support. We are putting our confidence in this man. Again, right? He was the president through most of the Great Depression. It was kicked off during the previous president, but it was basically his administration that was part of lifting us out of it, where we talked about all the programs, like all the social programs, the work programs. Social Security came out of the Great Depression, all these different programs to help get the United States back on its feet. And of course, then, he was also the president during World War II. So that changed. Actually, let's we'll bounce back and forth because I got some sort of Great Depression era stuff and I got some World War II stuff. But since I'm just going to keep on this page here because it's keep me from having to stop and start, let's take a look at a propaganda poster. So political cartoons, right, offer a political commentary that supports an event or a person, idea, or is critical of it, right? It's satirical, it's often sarcastic or ironic, and it paints people in characters. Different type of image, also very politically charged, is propaganda. Propaganda is basically defined as some type of material, literature, poster, imagery, and it could be speeches, it could be whole books of propaganda. But it is designed, its purpose and function is to persuade someone to do something or stop doing something. It often involves misinformation. It, is a lot of times used in a psychological manner. And it's rampant in our world today, and it's been that way for a long time. Governments use propaganda. It's not always a bad thing, but it's certainly, very strong suggestion to get you to do something. So here we have one, and I love this one because it really, this is very strong idea here. So, when you ride alone, you ride with Hitler. Join a car sharing club today. Okay. Sasha Gay, what is the idea here? Why am I riding with Hitler? Relevant to today's world to some degree.
I don't really understand this one.
Okay, let me update it a little bit. So we're in the car, right? What if I said something like, when you ride alone, you ride with Putin?
So that it would be like you agree with him, like you support him
Well,
or his ideas.
You're supporting him how? And if look at how alone is in all caps there, right? When you ride alone, you ride with Hitler. And then the part is really important too. Join a car sharing club. Why would you do that?
Is he promoting something? Oh, sorry.
That's okay. What did you say there?
I was asking if he's trying to promote Hitler.
It's the opposite. So keep in mind, this would have come from the government. right? A lot of the propaganda posters from World War II would have, been basically authorized and licensed for production, by some office in the U.S. government, in the federal government. So this is the federal government telling you not to do something. Why would you want to share your car?
Just save on gas.
Save on gas? Yeah, you're talking, right? So the idea that you're driving alone, I do this probably 3 times a day to go, but you're wasting gas, right? If you were sharing your vehicle or you're carpooling, like you mentioned this before, like Sunday drivers, right? So you make all of your trips in one day to save energy. Pick up your neighbor so they don't have to use their car. We need some posters like this right now because of gas prices. It would be helpful, wouldn't it? That's why I said ride with Putin. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why gas prices are the way they are right now, and the what's going on in Ukraine does have a small aspect of that. So that's why I kind of threw that out there, because there's a lot of talk about the way we've embargoed their oil, right? We're not importing Russian oil right now and things like that. So then the idea, right, is that I'm riding with Hitler. I'm helping Hitler because I'm riding in a car alone, right? So that's the message. This is the propaganda. That's what they want you to think when you get in your car, right? So during World War II, Hitler's rolling across Europe and doing all of that evil, and invading France, Poland, all these places. And the war effort at home for us was to conserve. We need to conserve our energy. We need to save gas. We need you to grow your own food at home. So it was connecting everybody to that war effort, right? The time change that we just went through, that was out of World War II to help us save energy. There was all these other, time before, standard time, you could go from one city to another and they might have a different, time on the clock. But that helped standardize time. And the idea was that it would help us save energy, daylight savings time, right? That's the idea behind it, to help us save energy for the war, for help the war making industry. So the idea there of connecting people with the war effort, but using, I really want to point that out, a really strong sort of idea behind, it's really, it seems kind of absurd, right? I get my car and I'm riding with Hitler because I had to go get, a gallon of milk at the store and I wasted some gas. It's like, oh, you're helping the enemy. But it really drove home, at that time, how important the war effort was. So that is a really, really good piece of propaganda, right? Trying to convince you to do something, or in this case, not to ride alone, join a car sharing club, carpool, and save energy. Okay, I do have, I think, one more propaganda poster from that era that I want to show you. So let's take a look at this one. All right, you guys can see that one?
Yes.
Loose lips might sink ships. Tracy, what do you think that means? What does loose lips mean? Do you have any idea?
Loose lifting. Maybe we glue something on the wall.
So it's so thinking about loose lips, like maybe I run my mouth a little too much. Maybe I talk a little too much.
You can't give secrets.
Giving away secrets. Yeah. So this you probably wouldn't see everywhere. But you would see it in factories, right? You might see it if you worked for the government, like in the State Department or, you know, in the Pentagon or something like that. You probably wouldn't see it like, you know, you would see the Ride with Hitler poster, you know, out when you would, you know, when you're out driving along by yourself and going to get groceries, right? You'd see it put up in Kroger or something like that. This one you would probably see like on factory floors. You would see it in industry, right? Because the people working would have sensitive information. So loose lips, right? They don't want you going out and, you know, the potential for spies, that you're going to say something that could jeopardize, you know, the war effort or jeopardize our fighting men in World War II. So it really succinct, right? Rhymes. This one I've heard my entire life, right? Loose lips. I've actually heard it's loose lips sink ships, but you know, here they have loose lips might sink ships, and that idea that if you have sensitive information, to keep it to yourself, because you know it could, you know, cost us men. My wife used to work for AT&T before we met, and she had a secret level clearance, which is it's a lower level clearance where she had to have a background check because she was working on sensitive technology for AT&T. This was in North Carolina. And you know, we met years later, and she would refuse to, you know, talk about it. I'd be like, come on, tell me, what were you doing? What were you doing? I'm not going to tell anybody. But it was the silliest thing because she had this little trophy that was like an employee recognition, and it was beautiful. It was this little crystal block, and it had a little crystal globe on the top of it. But on the statue, on this little thing that was engraved, was a submarine that was hauling this little net. So I didn't know what she was doing, but I knew it had something to do with submarines. And her mother also worked for the same place, and when she retired, she was loose-lipped. She told me everything about it. It was some type of technology that submarines could use to track other submarines, was what they were working on. Yeah, I just thought it was so funny that she wouldn't tell me what it was, but I just could walk over to that little trophy and see that it had something to do with submarines. But yeah, so nowadays people will have to pass. You have to, any type of like government work, you're going to pass a background check. They're going to make sure that you security clearance wise, you're not going to give up information. Make sure that you haven't lived out of if you've lived out of the country, that people can verify who you are, what you did. Even your credit score can affect your ability to work for the government, because they have a concern that people with low credit scores might be susceptible to being paid off for information. So if you're trying to get like a top level security clearance in the government, they look at your credit score. And if you have a bad credit score, that could put you at risk of getting that job, because they don't want you getting bought off by Russia, and giving information. But yeah, sort of getting away from the idea here. But yeah, so in World War II, they would have made sure that this idea that loose lips, that you keep your mouth shut when you're talking, and don't talk about what you're doing at work, because that could jeopardize our war effort. All right, let's see. We're going to go through a few more here. Sure. Actually, let's see. I'm going to bounce back here because I think I got some stuff that went between World War I and World War II. Here we go. Here's a nice one. Let's see if y'all can get this one. Okay, Tracy, what do you think this means? We have a bunch of women. This device that they're on is a steamroller. Okay, those aren't really a thing anymore. But if you're on the highway and you see road construction, they have these giant machines with these huge wheel in front that flattens the earth when they pave, and then they smash down like the asphalt and stuff with it. So it's like a modern day steamroller. So there we have these women on top of a steamroller here. What are they doing?
They try to revenge on the idea is opposite the idea.
So they're steam. So the idea here is they're steamrolling the opposition, right? They're smashing the opposition. They're flattening the opposition. I'm going to see if you could see they're wearing sashes, right? They have banners across their chest. What does that say? You guys make it out?
I can see the clearly equal birth rate.
Suffrage. Yeah, it's an S at the top. Equal suffrage. So what is that about? What are they? Remember what the suffrage movement was?
I'm not sure.
Voting.
Voting.
The right to vote.
Yes. So this is representation of the suffragists, right? The women suffragists that were working on voting rights. So is this idea, is it like pro-suffrage or against suffrage?
They are for.
For, right? You can tell, right? Because they're smiling, they're riding that steamroller, and they're crushing the competition or opposition. So yeah, it's a pro-suffrage illustration here. Very straightforward. The idea that they are, that's an old phrase, steamrolling the competition or steamrolling the opposition, steamrolling the other team. Getting steamrolled. It's just something you hear a lot, and it just means you're getting flattened, right? You're getting crushed. And in this case, these ladies are crushing the opposition to women's suffrage as they're riding, the West. So that we know that some of those states, like Utah, passed women's suffrage before it became a federal law. So that is what's included there. Part of the West, their ideas about suffrage are crushing everybody. All right. So that was pretty straightforward. Let's see what else we can do here. I think I got some. Here we go. All right. So here. Okay. The title is important. Welding in the missing link. Grace. What's the idea here? Well, this is actually from Ohio. So another suffrage type of idea. What's going on?
The interest of the home of women.
So it's interest of the home on the one side. What's on the other side? Interests of the government, right?
Yeah.
So just want to point out, she's not breaking that link, she's forming one. So what does that mean?
Oh, is it about the education?
Yeah, a little bit. But what is the, how is she, again, thinking about the women's suffrage movement, what is she doing there?
Oh, the votes, she's combining the votes.
Okay, so the vote, the vote of women is the missing link between interest of the home and interest of the government. So by adding women to vote, we connect our government interests with our interest of the home, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. All right, let's see here. Pull up another one. jumping around a little bit. Here we go. Another one. World War II, Great Depression era. So what is this one? Sasha Gay. Let's see if you know who's this dude with the big bowl.
I'm not sure.
So
Oliver Twist.
what's that?
Oliver Twist.
So I'll give you some context here. So Oliver Twist was a Charles Dickens novel, and the kid's an orphan, and he goes up to the cook, during dinner or breakfast or whatever, and I think they're having porridge or some slop, and he's just like, "May I have some more, please?" And they all freak out that he's asking for more. So just to make sure, in case it's a little hard to see, Congress is our little cook down here, right? So the legislative body. The big bowl says power on the inside and reorganization program on the outside. And then we have a little tag on his clothes that says the executive branch of the government. Who is the head of the executive branch of government?
Is it the president?
The president. Who was the president during the Great Depression and World War II?
Roosevelt.
Franklin Roosevelt, right? So we have another image of Roosevelt here. Okay. Now, let's start with this. Is this a sort of supportive Roosevelt cartoon, or does this seem to be a negative, critical one?
Supportive.
It's critical, right? This is negative. Here he's
asking for more power.
There you go, right on it, right? So he's got this huge bowl. Now, what he's talking about there is reorganization program. I think that's part of the government. But the idea here, Congress, this little guy has the soup ladle, right? And he's gonna, fill up FDR's big bowl of power, right? Giving him more power. And you even look at the spoon that FDR is holding there, right? He has this huge spoon, and he has a huge bowl, and inside it, it's his power. So, mention, there's the opinions on FDR, even today, are a wide spectrum. And of course, at the same time, you had plenty detractors that didn't like the idea of how he was expanding the executive branch of government. In some ways, he was considered a dictator because he seized a lot of power in an emergency way to, get our government or get our economy back online. He tried packing the courts. He tried adding, Supreme Court justices, all this stuff that a lot of people saw to be dangerous, this expansion. And it really did set a precedent, because he, as a president, did expand the power of the executive branch. He became a much more central and important figure, the president, in our government, and a much more visible one. Not that the president wasn't important before, obviously, but the power of the executive branch, the decision making that was going on, the programs that he was able to get passed, it really made the role of president a much more important one, and maybe skewed that system of checks and balances that we talk about. It might be out of balance because of FDR. And that was a lot of criticism towards him. Of course, on the other side, the things he was doing was trying to help, the United States. He was trying to get us out of the Great Depression and things like that. So that's why we saw, like the earlier cartoon, the people putting their confidence in him. They believed that he could get the job done, that he could get us back on track, that he could, solve our crisis. So there, and I wanted to make sure that you kind of saw those two roles. That you see him being shown as this, good guy that's doing the right thing for the right reasons. On the other hand, there's the side where what he was doing is concerning because of the amount of power that he's obtaining for the executive branch, and that's continued. The way we talk about the president, in our world, just like Joe Biden got blamed for high gas prices, or when things are going well, President brags that that he did it. When things are going bad, we blame things on him. He's one person with limited power, right? We've mentioned this. He is the overall executive of the country. He's the executive officer of the country, but we have three equal branches. So the legislative branch is responsible for passing laws. The Supreme Court is responsible for checking those laws to make sure that they are constitutional. And the executive branch signs those bills into law. They set an agenda. They promote certain legislation, and they serve as like our main head of state, right, as our main foreign dignitary and the chief executive of the armed forces as well. So in matters of defense. So, but he has to work with those other two sides, particularly with the legislative branch, to get things done. And on top of that, the world's just the world, and you can't blame everything on the president. Tornado there. I think I mentioned this. There used to be when Obama was president, there was always the joke about thanks Obama. Anytime anything went wrong, we blamed him. And that he wasn't the only one. We've done that for every president for some time. But sometimes things happen for no good reason. Bad things happen to good people. We can't say that he's responsible for COVID or the price of gases. Things happen that sometimes it's out of everybody's control. But let's see here. Let's pull something else up. But yeah, good job on that one. Okay, here's a good one. Sort of moving forward a little bit. Okay, that one's a little tiny. I'm going to blow it up here. Grace, what's this about? The top says handing down a historical decision. And it's a little tough to read when I blow it up there.
This is where they rule in favor of segregation. So that's the Supreme Court, and then there's segregation is unconstitutional.
Right on. And so we have our public school down there, our little schoolhouse, right? In the U.S. Supreme Court. So this is. Do you remember the court case?
It
starts with a B. Starts with a B.
Nice.
1954.
Is it when the president a president sent some people to guide this black in the school?
That was a result of the ruling here. So in order to desegregate, right, and in order to integrate those schools, some of those southern schools, Dwight Eisenhower, who was president, had to call in the National Guard and some of these poor kids, I forget which. Now this was a university; it wasn't a public school. Well, it was a public university; it was a state university. I don't know if it was Georgia. There was I think we talked about this, didn't we? That there was a student that had basically a detail of security for the entire So all of that is a result. So this is after it was determined that segregation is unconstitutional. So do you remember the name of the court case?
No.
Brown versus Board of Education.
Oh.
Right? Yeah. So remember we talked about Plessy versus Ferguson, right? Early on, that made separate but equal the law of the land. And then in 1954, there was a kid that they were not close to the black school, like it was across the city or whatever. They couldn't, it wasn't reasonable for that child to attend that school, so they sue. Boom. Yeah. So there you go. That's Brown versus Board of Education. That court ruling determined this separate but equal stuff is crap. There's no such thing. And we have to desegregate. So, segregation in schools was one of the issues under that separate but equal. But those Jim Crow laws, like we talked about, covered buses, right? We talked about Rosa Parks, and a lot of that happened after the ruling, right? So this happened. There was a lot of pushback, particularly in the South, to desegregate. There was state by state pushback, local governments. We talked about what was that jerk's name? Was it McGovern? That was the I'm going to look him up real quick. Yeah, I think it's McGovern. Right. No, not George McGovern. George Wallace, who was the governor of Alabama. And you remember we read a little piece from him. Then this was in 1964 when he was. So this was about 10 years after the ruling of Brown versus Board, and part of his inauguration speech to governor was like segregation then, segregation now, segregation forever. So thinking about some of the other cartoons we've looked at, right? So like that idea of Uncle Sam standing in front of the statue that says 1861 blank, right? We were still talking 100 years later. George Wallace, as governor of Alabama, was still trying to segregate the state of Alabama. So these ideas are still ongoing, and unfortunately, it's something that we're still dealing with. But yeah, good job. So that's basically, segregation is unconstitutional. The U.S. Supreme Court ruling. This is just a representation of the Brown versus Board ruling. Let's take a look at a few more here. Okay, this one's a little more contemporary. I don't know if I can find it again. Okay, here we go. Here we go. So the Cold War, 1945, 1991, on no account to be used because the enemy might retaliate. And it says the same thing on the opposite side. So, Sasha Gay, what is the idea here, right? We've talked a little bit about the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union.
I eat it. I finished your dinner last night.
It's actually really relevant right now as well.
They're both fighting.
Well, both sides are fighting, right? What, it says H bomb, Z bomb, Y rocket. So what type of weapon are we talking about there in the background?
Nuclear.
Yeah, nuclear weapons, right? And then we have our soldiers in the front there. What are they using?
Bow and arrow.
Why?
So,
That's an exaggeration, right? They're using a very primitive weapon, but
they're trying to prevent using the nuclear weapons.
right. So, and you know, unfortunately, this is something that keeps coming up here because of the war in Ukraine. We're dealing with a nuclear power, right? If we were dealing with whoever, you know, trying to think of some country that could invade Ukraine, you know, just anybody else that wasn't a nuclear power, we would just crush them. You know, it wouldn't be any issue, but it's a nuclear power and you'd have to deal with other nuclear powers differently. And what we look, you know, they're firing those bows and arrows. So throughout the Cold War, we had what were called proxy wars. The Korean War, the Vietnam War, that, you know, America was directly involved in. The Russo-Afghan War, which was the war that Russia fought against Afghanistan in the late 1970s through the 1980s. Also a proxy war of the Cold War. And there was all other little hotspots around the globe where, remember, you know, just looking at like that very first cartoon we looked at with LBJ and Brezhnev, where they're slicing up the world. Gaining influence also meant supporting certain countries over other countries, and that, you know, wound up getting us pulled into wars. You know, for instance, like, you know, the Vietnam War, our feeling on the side of was the idea that if Vietnam fell to communism, the domino effect, which I think we've talked a little bit about, you know, all these other South Asian countries, and eventually, you know, most of Asia would fall to communism. And we had to sort of, you know, stake our claim somewhere, you know, draw the line in the sand that we can't let this continue to happen. So that was a proxy war, right? Part of the reason that we lost that war was because we worried about involving China and the Soviet Union. So we only took it so far. It was the same thing with the Korean War. We drove at one point the North Korean forces all the way to the border of China, and we stopped because we worried that if we went into China to chase North Korea and just pulverize them, that we would draw China into the war, which is exactly what happened anyway. And China beat back the U.S. forces until we, you know, basically had a stalemate there at the 38th parallel that separates North Korea and South Korea. That war has never ended. There is a ceasefire basically between those two countries, but there has never been a peace treaty signed ending the Korean War. So, and then Vietnam was the same thing. The way we fought that war was trying to keep China or the Soviet Union from getting directly involved. So we were careful about the targets that we picked inside of North Vietnam. It was difficult because there was like Chinese and Soviet advisors there. So we were concerned about, you know, accidentally killing a Soviet officer or a Chinese officer, because escalating it was so dangerous if we got those involved. And then next thing you know, we're pointing nuclear weapons at each other. So the bow and arrow kind of represents these smaller wars, these conventional wars, which was the way that we fought, because, you know, on no account these weapons should be used, because it could result in a retaliation. You don't fire a nuclear weapon. You know, right now there's this, you know, sort of anxiety that, you know, Putin has sort of mobilized some of these nuclear arms and some of these tactical nukes that he could use against Ukraine. And, you know, most experts would say, no, this will never happen, but there's still that tension there. So, yeah, good job, kind of pointing that out. We're not going to use these weapons because it could cause a retaliation. Let's see if I got any more. We've been going for a while here. I'll give you one more Cold War one here, and then we'll call it a day. So let me see here. And it's another Cold War. I'll just point out who it is to help you guys along. So the United States there with their peace sign, that's supposed to be Dwight Eisenhower, who was president through the 50s. Well, 54. From 53, I guess he was elected to 61, somewhere. Yeah, 54 to 61. And that is Nikita Khrushchev, who was the premier before. I mentioned Brezhnev earlier. So this is Nikita Khrushchev, who was the premier of the Soviet Union. They both have their peace signs. Budget first is the little piggy bank that Dwight Eisenhower is holding. And then Khrushchev is holding a giant Soviet missile. What do you think that means? Give you guys a chance here. What's going on? Is this critical of Dwight Eisenhower? Is this a negative take of Dwight Eisenhower?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is the problem? What seems to be Dwight Eisenhower's concern?
The other one said assistant power, like assistant power. What was that word? The one starting with A.
Russian power.
Oh, is it? Oh,
yeah, Russian power. Yeah.
So they're saying they're equipped with the nuclear weapons.
So what seems to be Dwight Eisenhower's priority here?
The
budget first.
Okay, yeah. So the critique there is, the criticism is he's worried too much about money, while the Soviet Union doesn't seem to be concerned about that, right? Because they got the giant missile, and Eisenhower was a true conservative in the fact that he was very fiscally responsible, and we never really talked about Eisenhower much as president, but he sort of perpetuated the Cold War because he moved the United States military more to a nuclear structure around a nuclear army, a nuclear air force, a nuclear navy. The idea was we don't need a big force as far as manpower, right? As far as number of soldiers, if we have a big nuclear force, because that's going to serve as a deterrent. And also, if we had to use them, we'll just vaporize our competition. So he was able to spend less money, but spent more on nuclear weapons, but less on a conventional force. But here, the overall concern and the criticism that the cartoonist is putting forth, right, is that he's worried way too much about budget when we have this, great threat coming out of the Soviet Union. I would imagine this is probably from later in the Eisenhower administration. I think it was 1957 or 58 when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, right, which was the first artificial satellite to travel around the Earth. And there was a big concern in the United States that we were falling behind technologically, that particularly with rocketry. And the fear with the falling behind in rocketry is that's how you send nuclear weapons, right? With the nuclear warhead. So if we can't maintain our superiority with technology, we're going to fall behind and we're going to lose to the Soviet Union. So a lot going on there, but yeah. So the main idea, which you guys kind of clued in and keyed on to there, is that it's Eisenhower's more worried about the budget than he is dealing with the Soviet Union and building maybe an arsenal to deal with the Soviet Union. All right, we've been going for a while, so I had a few more, but I think that might be a good stopping point. We can maybe pick up with a few more pictures down the road here. Is it helping to sort of strengthen those ideas? Are you getting a better idea of what a political cartoon is and the purpose it serves?
Yeah.
Is there any questions? Like, is there still some confusion? Is there anything that could maybe help clarify it?
It's coming. It's coming small. You'll get it.
So I started thinking, I know, I think, all of you guys are non-native Americans, right? You guys have come from places, and I just don't think you're cynical enough or bitter enough to get political cartoons. I think you still, maybe need to, spend a few more years getting jaded and bitter as an American, and that might help. But that's always the thing to remember. It's a very, sort of sometimes bitter, sometimes cynical take on the world. It doesn't always look at the world in the happiest light. It's when it's a critical idea, it really is thinking the worst of people a lot of times. And the positive ones, we did see those as well, right? Like the one with FDR and stuff too. But you just have to. Sometimes it is difficult to see. It's like you have to look at the people in there. It's like, how are they being characterized? And even like with that one FDR, he's got the giant bowl, he's got the giant spoon. Looking at a lot, you really have to take in all parts of the image sometimes to really understand those ideas. All right. But yeah, maybe we can hit it up again here down the road before you guys take your test. And we're just going to kind of alternate for the foreseeable future between some language arts practice and some social studies practice. We'll probably get into some language arts. Do you guys want to do some more extended response stuff maybe tomorrow?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll work on that. I think we'll go back to one of those earlier passages from the actual lessons from Paxson that we did, and we can work up another. And I'll start throwing it out to you guys. You can start helping me put it together. So we'll do that tomorrow. Okay.
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 All right.
All right. We'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.